Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hi, how are you? I'm never going to figure out what intros are. Good luck. I'm bad at remembering shit that happened yesterday, let alone things that is happening today. Or right this moment. Anyway, since things are taking forever to actually happen, we are going to play a game of I'm going to start doing things on my own. And eventually other things will happen that require more work. Maybe. Until then, look, I have a fox. Yes, you clicked on this video because you want to hear my opinion about the Toledo Zoo, and that is really your fault. So, sorry, a thing is obnoxious in front of me, and I must fix it. So, number one, I have a lot of plushies from the zoo because I like the zoo, because I like animals, because that is just how this works. I am very distracted and I would apologize, but this is the shit you signed up for when you hit the button that says that you like this. So here we are. These are my 3 newest ones. So I was supposed to do Christmas in July yesterday, and because the zoo has the Toledo Zoo has a lights before Christmas thing, and then they had a Christmas in July thing this year, and I was supposed to do that, and then my head decided that was unallowed, and I was going to get a migraine right before the actual lights started, when we had gone to get food. So that didn't happen. However, I do know that it would have been really nice because we actually got to see a lot of the things that we're setting up. And unlike how they normally have at the regular Lights Before Christmas, the Christmas in July had mini golf being set up, a bunch of different game things being set up, and brain crafts. That's it. I had actually been looking forward to going to it yesterday. That didn't get to happen because of my horrible migraine. It kind of sucks. Kind of sucks real bad. Yes. So, here we have African Wild Dog, also known as a painted dog. So usually when we go, we are going on a Sunday because that is when my boyfriend has the more ability to go, because his church is weird and does things on Saturdays. So usually the Africa booth for selling things is not open, which means I usually cannot get my fingies on these because the zoo has a lot of like random plushies that are only available in very specific locations throughout the zoo. That's how they convince you to buy more things. It works, apparently. At least it works on me because I like stuffies. So I finally got myself an African painted doggy, and I love him. He's very cute and fluffy. His head is slightly looking in one direction, and I don't know if that's a manufacturing error or if they were all like that because they didn't really have a lot of them left when I got him. But that doesn't make me love him less. I think it adds character, and I love him. He's very cute, and he's got the embroidered eyes, and I love him. I'm just going to repeat that several times throughout the beginning portion of this video while I show you the cute things that I got, because that's what I do. Fox. He's very soft. Oh no. I think this was supposed to be one of their here's the stuffed animals you buy for babies things, because they have several of those where it's like, here's a bunch of stuffed animals that are for babies and they're extra soft. And I'm like, but what if I want the stuffed animal that's extra soft and for babies? And then I said, well, I don't care, and then I bought it anyways. These are the ones that are not very good at being realistic to the animal, which I feel like they can get away with doing with a lot of the more common animals like foxes and wolves. You can get away with that pretty well because they're more common, and bears and stuff. You can, because finding realistic versions of them is easy, making stylized versions of them is also not nearly as frowned upon, whereas if you look at the painted dog, it's a lot more realistic, at least in terms of like color and proportions and such things, because who the heck else is gonna have African wild painted doggo friend? The answer is no one. This is why I like getting plushies at zoos, because they sometimes, well, zoos and like national parks can be like really hyper specific about what they have. I really love that because I love animals, and I've always had this thought in my brain in which my brain goes, well, we can't own every animal in the world. What we can do is own stuffed versions of as many of them as we can get our hands on. What is my hair doing? I don't... Listen, I'm a mess. I didn't really plan this in any way. You can tell. I'm not good at planning things. I kind of just do them on a whim and we see how this goes. So, good luck dealing with that. Possum is a opossum, actually. Is incredibly important to remember the difference. Also, I didn't realize this when I bought him. But I actually realized it after I bought him, and I had him at home. He's a puppet. He's a puppet. Oh, I love him. Yes, so he is an opossum, not a possum. Possums live in Australia. Opossums live in America. Opossums are adorable trash bandits. Possums break into your house and eat all of your sweets. To be fair, I feel like an opossum would also do that if it was more capable. Anyway, so yes, I thought, because the Toledo Zoo is the only zoo that I have ever been to, well, I guess technically I've been to like a wildlife, one of the wildlife preserve zoo things. I continued talking when I bent down and you couldn't see my face. I feel like this is the kind of mess that you signed up for when you decided you liked me. So, fair warning, I am not going to be comparing the zoo to any other zoo, because I haven't been to any other zoo since I was a child, a little child, a little baby, small child. Because the Toledo Zoo has always been the zoo that has been closest to me, and thus it has been always my local zoo. So, from what I have seen about other zoos, most people tend to rank Toledo Zoo as about a average-ish zoo. That seems correct. The Toledo Zoo does have a lot of little historical, like more historical buildings. The somewhat recently renovated aquarium. It's been renovated since I've been out of high school, so that means it's been since 2014-ish. I think it finished up right around when I was getting out of high school. So, what they did with that was, and I actually, because I was in small animal care, I actually got to see the aquarium, the behind the scenes of the aquarium building before it was all of the way built. That was actually really great. I loved that. One of the head administrator people for the Toledo Aquarium actually is the one that makes the tests for the aquarium management portion of the schooling that I took. So that was actually quite nice, because I got to interact with that a lot more fully and thoroughly. I do highly appreciate the way that they kept the entire outside of the building the same, and they just completely gutted and redid the inside. That way it still retains the historical factor of the thing. There are a lot of, I'm going to say, continually empty exhibits in the primate area, because they expanded the outdoor areas for the primates, and thus they don't usually have them inside anymore. I don't know, because I didn't, like I said, I'm just making this video on the fly. I didn't look into if they use the old indoor exhibits specifically for, as like their quote bedrooms unquote, where they put them at night so that way they can be out of the people area, or if they also made them different bedrooms and they're going to be reusing the big open primate areas. But the primate walk specifically always seems really empty now because of all of the empty indoor portions of the exhibits. Now that's great because it means that the animals are in better locations, they're in bigger things, the red pandas are very out of place because they put the red pandas in the primates because they reused one of the old monkey exhibits that was too small, I think, or that was, I guess, deemed too small because they got a bigger population or something. Or listen, I don't work there. I don't know for sure what's going on. I'm making guesses based off of my general knowledge of the industry and how things tend to work. Typically, as zoos get older, they show their age, and then they have to revamp the exhibits that they previously had. So what I'm really hoping for is that they will reuse the indoor exhibits and put something smaller, and then maybe instead of calling it primates, maybe just make it like generally themed or something. Because the exhibits that they have that are indoors actually look pretty nice, at least generally speaking. They're, like I said, they're still showing their age, but this is also coming from a place of nostalgia because I've been going there since I was a wee little child. I have to fix that. A brain with the going everywhere. So, I also need to keep watch of the time on this, but I have no idea how to do that, so we're going to just wing it. What was it? Right. I'm hoping that they will reuse the primate areas and maybe redo them for something else. That would be great. Because they have been slowly updating some of the older things. Also, side note, right now is like a really good time to go to the Toledo Zoo if you want to. Because there are just so many animals with babies. There are orangutan babies. Our polar bear just had two cubs. There's a young grizzly. It was a grizzly, right? Yeah, it was a grizzly. There's young gorillas still. Well, still, I know. There's I think there was a baby giraffe out when I went. It was either, it might not have been this time, but I think it was last time where the baby giraffe was out. There was baby ringtails. Unfortunately, they have moved the ringtails from their previous location to a different one that we couldn't find. So I think they might have just been behind the scenes. Our elephants, at least one of them is currently pregnant. So that will be, I guess I can't say soon given the gestation period of an elephant, but that will also be happening in the foreseeable future. But I do feel as though they could do a little bit better with the amount of empty exhibits that they have, and I'm hoping that that's part of the renovation things that they're doing, is they're going to be, while they're revamping and making the exhibits bigger. Like, they have a butterfly house there that I think only ran for 2 years, and now it's just a greenhouse. And while I appreciate the fact that they have a greenhouse, I feel like it could be better utilized, because now you've just got like a big foggy building at one of your main entrances to your zoo. You've just got a big foggy building, and it's just there, and no one can enter. And you have a greenhouse there. You could turn that into like an aviary for like some of the birds that maybe you don't have. Or heck, you could embrace the fact that it looks like a greenhouse on the outside and put like, they have actually a really good bug/insect thing set up in their museum, but I can assure you there are way more bugs that you could have out, and you could embrace the fact that it is a greenhouse. Or, because it's a greenhouse, you could do amphibians. More amphibians, more herps, because herps in general do really well in greenhouses. They figured that one out already, because I do also have to say I love the way that they updated the museum, because before the museum was kind of meh. I remember, at least when I was a child and I was younger, not wanting to go to it because there was basically nothing in it except for you could meet Santa. That was the only reason as a child that you wanted to go to the museum. You could meet Santa, and you could for the Lights Before Christmas. That was all. Now they've turned it into like a really good thing, and Zoo Tours actually did a really good video on it, but they didn't show everything, and he even says that he didn't show everything. So they have like a whole bunch of like pinned insects too, and like skeletal parts of them, so you can see how they actually work. I think the only thing that I would add to specifically that room would be what is called an exploded skull, because most people don't seem to realize how many bones actually make up your skull, not including your teeth, obviously. Pretty much everyone realizes how many teeth that you have way too many teeth. But that's actually not a joke. Humans have way too many teeth. That's why we have so many jaw problems. Anyway, most people don't realize how many bones actually make up your skull. And so what would have, I think, been an excellent inclusion, even if it, like, presumably it would be better to get it as a fake, because getting a real one, I'm aware, is extremely expensive because it's really hard to get. Well, not really hard to get, really hard to make, is what's called an exploded skull. And that is where they take and they very carefully break the skull into all of its... break isn't the correct word. Very carefully, like, cut the skull into all of its components, and they open it up. And you would display this in, like, one of those stereotypical domes, where you have a glass dome, and then you have the skull, and then, like, a wood base or whatever. And then you could have something explaining, like, you have this many parts of your skull. Did you know how many whatever animal they want to have has? And then maybe have like another one next to it of an animal, and you could have a comparison of the human and the animal. I don't know. I feel like that would have been, and maybe that's just coming, and like this is all just my opinion, and my opinion means Jack Diddley Squoot, but you came here for my opinion, so you're here. I feel like that would have been a really good, more educational experience, since the entire point of the museum thing is for it to be educational. And they also added with that, like, a gigantic greenhouse. I'm going to say pseudo rainforest, because it doesn't do like the actual rainforest, it rains thing, but it does like do the misting and the thing. It is very humid, but it's also weirdly cooling if you manage to go in at exactly the correct time when all the misters are on. So, in general, I'm going to say that I do thoroughly love the Toledo Zoo. Again, this is both nostalgia and the fact that I've been to basically no other zoos. And those two factors mean, along with the fact that I've always really loved animals, combine to form this opinion. I do thoroughly believe that, and this isn't just a Toledo Zoo thing, this is any place that has aquariums in general thing. Everyone seems to focus on the saltwater instead of showing much to do with freshwater. And the Toledo Zoo did do significantly better at that when they did the update. I think the Toledo Zoo has always been better at showing freshwater than most places care to be, for the simple fact that we are so close to the Great Lakes, and thus it's like, oh, well, we can just be like, here is some of the local wildlife that we have. Look at the things. But it seems like because freshwater is more common to have as home aquariums, I say with literally 2 aquariums in my background. That one's going to be a terrarium, don't worry about it. It seems like because they're more common in the aquarium trade, they don't tend to care about showing them as much. And my only problem with this is that, in my experience generally, a lot of people don't seem to understand fully how to take care of their home aquarium tank. I'm not throwing shade. This is a fully generalized thing that I am saying. But it seems like people do not tend to do research before they set up a fish tank, because fish are considered the quote beginner unquote pet. And thus they get incredibly confused when their itty bitty goldfish gets like this big. When their pleco they buy at this size, they find out can get like huge. And I mean, like, their max size is like, I think 1.5 feet or something like that. And then they get confused because their fish won't stop dying because they overstocked their tank. And I'm just like, and this is, I think, a people problem more than a thing, but people have computers that they keep in their pockets in the form of cell phones. And at no point in time during the process of getting the tank, setting up the tank, just going to the pet store, trying to figure out what fish they want, did they go, hey, maybe we should see how big this particular kind of fish gets. Maybe we should see if this kind of fish does well with other kinds of fish. Maybe we should make sure that the label on the thing is correct for the fish. Because, especially around here for some reason, people are bad at labeling their fish. I literally have a catfish downstairs that I bought as a mystery catfish. And I'm like, well, that's helpful, isn't it? I bought him just to see what he would grow up to be. And because I have tanks that are big enough that I know that I can handle most pet trade catfish that are like under $20. So that has a lot to do with me specifically being a little bit too invested in the industry. But I feel like you could a lot more easily be like, especially if you have a zoo and you are a educational facility, you could say like, hey, you bought this fish at this size. This is how big it's gonna get. Like, a lot of them have the giant red-tailed catfish because the red-tailed catfish and the ripsaws are becoming a lot more popular in aquariums for zoos because they're becoming more popular in the pet trade, so they're easier to get your hands on. The problem is, in the pet trade, when you buy them, most of the time when you buy them, they're this small. And the people who are buying them, because that's a neat looking catfish, do not realize that the thing that they're buying at this size and the thing in the zoo that is huge and like a couple feet long are the same thing. Because for some reason, a lot of people seem to think, well, if you can buy it in the pet trade, surely it means that it is a smaller version of the larger one that you can find. No, it's not. It's not. I can promise you it's not. It's the same thing. The rate in which it grows is dependent upon how much you feed it. That much is true, at least, I guess. But seriously, this is my plea to you. Please look up the fish you're buying before you put them in a fish tank. Some fish, I think, should be illegal to buy without checking to see what size the tank that you're putting them in is. Everyone's like, oh, goldfish only grow to the size of the thing that you put them in. No. You are literally just killing them before they could get to their proper size. They are carps. They can and will get to the size of an ornate koi fish if you give them enough space. They are pond fish. You need at minimum a 10-gallon tank for a goldfish. I bought my goldfish at this big. Want to know how big he is now? He's bigger than the size of my hand. I've only had him for a couple years. And he's one of the ones that gets rounder instead of longer. Most of the ones that you get are going to get longer. Please, please. This has been an entirely off rant. But I think that is my main problem with, I think, aquariums in general, is that because people don't tend to care as much about the freshwater fish, nobody bothers showing as many freshwater fish. And the Toledo Zoo did get significantly better with this when they made the update. But I feel like what would have been kind of neat is because they have a couple of tanks which I like to call the you can buy these at home tanks. I think what would have been kind of neat is to have like a tank that is like, this is your basic home aquarium, and then next to it have a much larger tank that is, and this is how big they will actually get. And this is how long that all of your fish in your average home aquarium will live. So that way you know the investment you're getting into when you decide on a whim, I'm going to set up a fish tank. Because a lot of people don't realize how long fish will live if you take care of them properly. And I think that is a thing that could and should be better shown to people in general. And that's not the fault of anyone in particular, I don't think. More so the individuals that don't bother looking into the information. I've gotten completely off track because this has been my rant about people that don't understand how aquariums work. I will apologize after somebody decides to fix this. But yeah, all in all, Toledo Zoo, I think it's lovely. A lot of the buildings that are there are more historical buildings. So you do have the history portion with it. They do tend to be pretty good at including educational bits with their like signage. So that's also good. I'm hoping with the renovations that they've been slowly getting around to, that a lot of the more empty enclosures will be fixed, I guess not fixed isn't the correct word, will be properly stocked. That makes more sense. With things that are more suited to the size of said thing. Or, alternatively, you could make it clear that, hey, this is their sleeping quarters, that's why this room is empty. I think either of those would be a better option than just having a bunch of empty things with nothing there telling you why they're empty. Just as a thought, I feel like that would be a better option. I do really, really hope they bring back the fall lights, because if they do, I can guarantee you that that will be up. Because they did them exactly 1 year, and then they stopped doing them because it was like a Chinese lantern fall light celebration thing. I went to it the 1 year that they had it, and it was amazing. So I'm hoping they do that again. I will almost assuredly do the lights before Christmas when they come around. That was what this video was supposed to be. And then I failed. Oops. My body decided I was not allowed to do that. Oops. But, yes. I also need probably a thing to keep my thing from doing the dumb thing with the audio. But, that's not going to happen, because that's expensive. Yeah. So, those were a weird combination of pros and cons. The last couple notes that I have is that you can, in fact, just keep using your old zoo cups as long as they are still recognizably zoo cups, because you actually took care of them correctly. That's important. And by that I mean, the way that they encourage you to keep buying new zoo cups is by consistently changing the animal on the zoo cup, and every few years changing the general design of the cup in like how it's shaped. But we have zoo cups from when I was a itty bitty child, like 7 or 8. Well, we don't. I don't. My cousin does, because it was her family that always took me with them, because that's how my life is. But she has those old heckin' zoo cups, and they still honor those. They will still give you the refill price for the old zoo cups that are like, heck, I want to say those are like almost 20 years old, and they'll still refill them for you for the same refill price as if you bought a new one. So, if you decide you want to go to the Toledo Zoo, dig out your old zoo, and you've been there before, dig out your old cup, because they will still recognize those. Water refills are free. The main problem that I have with that is that they don't make it easy for you to refill your cups if you only want water. Because if you only want water, you still have to wait in the long line to get to the front of the thing to get your drink. If you only want water, they don't have any water bottle refill stations. That's a thing that desperately needs fixed, because it gets hot as heck around here sometimes. They have water fountains, but most of them don't work very well anymore because they need upgraded badly. So, if you are going, I would recommend you bring your own water bottles, so that you can keep yourself hydrated throughout your walking around. Typically, I find that it takes a good chunk of the day to get through everything, but that is because I am easily distracted by all of the indoor things, because I really love both aquariums and reptile houses, and like herps in general, which is why I also love the museum. And those are like the 3 main indoor things that they have. So, I tend to spend more time, I think, than your average person going through those. Because they're reptile houses. It's not small, but it's also not big. That's why they actually, I'm pretty sure that's why they have part of a good chunk of their reptiles now also in the museum. Because their reptile house is one of their historical buildings, which means that they don't want to tear anything down to expand. And it also has a really cool theme. The reptile house is like all medieval themed, and if you actually look closely, a lot of the designs in the railings are also reptiles. There's like cobras and stuff in their railing designs. So, hey, there's a fun thing for you to look for next time you go. The railing probably could use a little bit of a scrubbing on the inside, but that's just because it's bronze, and bronze tends to not, at least it looks like, it's either like bronze or brass or something like that, and that tends to get the weathery thing really quickly. So that's no fault of theirs, more so than it is of the material that they used. But I really, really love the reptile house because of the whole medieval theme. But I am fairly certain that because the reptile house is so small, that is why they put a whole bunch of their reptiles into the museum now. I think the museum part of it, I don't know if the entire building is the original museum, because I know previous to this museum, that building was still like a old museum kind of amphitheater, sort of like an indoor, I'm gonna say indoor amphitheater, but that's probably wrong because I'm sure that has a different name. But I know that previous to this, it was still kind of similar but worse. That's the only way I can describe it. Similar but worse. It desperately needed the upgrade, but what I don't know for certain is how much of the outside is original versus how much was added on due to the entire surrounding area now being filled up. Because previously, if I remember correctly, and I might not be because that one's been done for some time now, and I didn't get to go to the zoo for like a good chunk of time in my teenage years for reasons. But if I recall correctly, previous to this, you could walk around almost the entire building with very little impeding you. Whereas now it's entirely surrounded by things, which is good. What I'm unsure of, though, is if because of that, if they were able to get away with taking down like part of it to expand. Does that make any sense? I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my brain. Yeah. I think they're supposed to be I know they're expanding a whole bunch of things. Currently, right now, one of the main ways to get from one part of the zoo to the other is closed because of them expanding things. I think they actually reopened their little subway thing specifically so that they could do this update, which, quite frankly, it needed anyways. Because of Toledo Zoo being a somewhat older zoo, a lot of things need to be just slowly updated and reworked, as is to be expected, and that's what they're doing. The problem is that when you're in the middle of that reworking, things are going to look a little bit bare. And I think that is and I think that's where we're at right now, where because of them doing the slow reworking of things and fixing things and putting things and bringing them up to where they need to be in the modern times, there's a lot of things that are empty, which is great because that means those animals are in better places, either within the zoo or at a different zoo, because that's how zoos work. I don't want to use this analogy, but the only one that I can think of is zoos do animals like trading cards. You don't pay for an animal that you want for your zoo. You trade an animal that you have for another animal from a different zoo. That's how zoos work. I don't like the trading card analogy, but it is the only one my brain can come up with. So, yes. In conclusion, I am hoping that they fix the emptiness that I have been noticing the last couple of trips that I've been there in the somewhat near future. I'm sure that they will, because Toledo Zoo has always been pretty good with the breeding programs, especially with our polar bears. there's rarely been a period of longer than a couple years that I can remember not having polar bear cubs. So we are great with the breeding programs, which means that the little emptinesses in our zoo should not last long. I'm just excited to see what they become, and thus I am very anxious about it. Because that's what my brain does. I'm also really glad that they've added, so the Toledo Zoo actually now has, previously they had no touch tanks, now we have 3, which is great. 2 of them are within the aquarium, obviously. One of them is like a smaller one that you can go in, and it's a lot of the little smaller things like your sea stars and your whatevers. And then the bigger one is obviously the rays, because that is the most common thing to put in a touch tank. However, the third one is the one that is a lot more unique, I think. I haven't heard of it being anywhere else. They have a sturgeon touch tank in our little museum where I think it's like your native species. And they have a lovely little sturgeon touch tank, and that is really, really fun. Yes. More zoos need more interactive experiences with their animals in order to allow for conservation to be more instilled within the population. I think those words came out of my mouth in the way that they were presented in my head correctly. Yes. I do wish that they had better places, more, I don't know if more or better is the correct way to say it, but more places in which you can both fill up your existing cup instead of having vending machines everywhere. It would make more sense, especially as a zoo, to allow for you to have more access to places to use reusable containers rather than creating more waste. I feel like that's a fair thing for me to request. Because the main problem that I always have at the zoo is that I seem to be nearly constantly dehydrated because they make it really difficult for you to get water in your already existing drinking cup without buying bottles of water out of vending machines. And my thought process is, I've already got the container. Why would I want to buy a different container that I'm going to throw away? So that would be my request, is during your constant changes and renovations, you make it easier for us to get water. Because you don't have that many hiding holes from all of the heat that we get up here. And you seem to forget that sometimes it gets hot as heck up here. So please give us hidey holes from the heat, and or allow us to get water easier. That's my main complaint. That is all. Yes. I don't think I have anything else to say. And if I come up with more things to say, I will simply make another video, because I have a Zoom membership, which means that I can go at any point in time that I would like. So that means I can just keep randomly making these videos as I come up with things to say. Yay! Okay, bye.